Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. What do you got for us today, Claire? Do I need to take notes?
No, I don't think so. It's fairly easy to follow. Today, we're headed to a place.
Do the win.
No,
Yes.
you are going to guess the where first. It's my case, and I'll say how we're doing it.
2000.
We're headed to a
1999.
place where Mountain Dew was born, and the home of the largest naval base. Need a third guess or third hint? Is also where nearly half of the Civil War battles were fought and where it eventually ended.
Norfolk is the biggest naval base, right?
Yep.
I want to say Virginia.
I'm going to tell you. So the treaty to end the Civil War was signed in Appomattox.
Oh, okay.
And for everybody else, she was right. Virginia. I didn't know that was where Mountain Dew was born, by the way.
I didn't know. I wouldn't have guessed it off of that one.
That's why I started it first. I knew if I said the treaty was signed in Appomattox, you'd be like, Virginia.
Well, the naval base one, I was like, pretty sure that's in Norfolk, but I'm not 100%.
Anyhow, so we're headed to Virginia. Our time frame is 2003-ish to
I was
2014.
right-ish. Oh.
Yeah, you had a 2 in there.
I said 2000.
Well, I say fuzzy because you'll see. But, so let's dive right in. In particular of Virginia, we're headed to Alexandria.
That is not close to Norfolk.
I didn't say it was close to Norfolk. You were trying to guess a state. Challenged individual.
It's not nice.
Anyhow, for everybody else who aren't native Virginians, it's just south of Washington, D.C. and is one of the more pricey places to live in the nation.
Uh-huh.
The average household income in Alexandria is over $300,000. But it's still cheaper to live there than in D.C., but it's still considered to be a pricey place to live. It's also considered, or it's not considered low crime, it is a low crime area. It's not like when we've done cases before where we're diving into the ghetto where people die every minute.
You and your statistics, you like to give me a hard time, but, all right.
A little bit of an exaggeration, so don't get on to me with your fact checking.
I was just sitting here like,
Anyway, so on December 5th, 2003, 62-year-old Nancy Dunning would get a knock at her door one morning, broad daylight. She would head over to see who was there and ended up being shot 3 times.
Oh, gosh.
Once was in the back of the head with a .22 caliber gun.
Wait, if she went to... How'd she...
So the way I see it,
she turned to
she
run.
was shot 3 times. My guess would be exactly that. She went to shut the door, turned, or anything like that. Unfortunately, there's no witnesses, so that's where you can only guess by... at the back of the head, I assume she ran. Like anybody else who, if somebody puts a gun in your face. Now, Nancy was the wife of Sheriff Jim Dunning, who had pledged that he would find her killer and leave no stone unturned. Sadly, no matter that heartfelt effort, nothing would come from the investigation because there were no witnesses, no leads, obviously they can pull the bullets from her body, but they don't have the gun, and it's just, she was shot in the doorway, so you don't even really have much in way of evidence.
That's really sad.
Yeah. Now, it would also appear that whoever shot Nancy wasn't motivated by anything other than killing her. Nothing was ransacked, nothing was stolen, she wasn't raped, she was just literally shot and killed.
And the husband was the sheriff?
Correct.
So I'm going to say that somebody had a vendetta out.
Now, if you're wondering how no one heard anything, because again, we're in the city where it's low crime.
Did they live near a train?
No. The rounds, when they were recovered, they learned that they were low velocity rounds that would make less noise than a higher velocity round. So it would make it possible for the neighbor or anybody near to not hear that round.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Now you do. 22s aren't particularly loud anyway, because they're those teeny tiny bullets.
Was it a Relger?
Anyway, Now, some people would grow to consider the sheriff the most likely suspect since spouses are usually ones murdering their spouses, or at least having some sort of hand in it. It also wasn't helpful that there were rumors about their marriage being on the rocks.
Hmm.
Now, as time passed, the sheriff, I can imagine, losing your spouse suddenly and you don't have a hand in it, would kind of break your will to live a little bit and your world changed. So his passion for life and doing what he did his whole life start to dwindle, and as the years fade, he would eventually retire from being the sheriff. Now, he was the sheriff since 1986, so retirement was in his future eventually anyway. 9 years of no answers would go by, and in 2012, Sheriff Dunning would pass away in his sleep due to natural causes at the age of 62.
That seems really young.
Well, he might not have been in the bestest of shape. And stress kills, so I would imagine 10 years into he doesn't know who killed his wife. That's a lot of heartbreak.
And people are looking at him.
And he had to been eating a whole lot of tato chips in those 9 years.
You don't know. We've discovered there's lots of men folk that do the cooking and the cleaning.
Yeah.
Maybe he was the cooker and the cleaner, or maybe he at least knew how to make a bowl of cereal. Maybe it wasn't just tater chips.
Well, I would say 9 years of Frito pie might have been a contributing factor to his death at 62, but
he gassed himself to death.
Well, he did go in his sleep, so I can't say that wasn't a possibility.
Poor guy. I couldn't imagine.
And I feel bad for him because he also passes away still being the only one that was considered the suspect in his wife's murder. And when he dies, her case is still considered active because there's nothing to go off of.
Did he have a 22? Could they tie a 22 to his possession in any way, shape, or form? Why is he the only...
So the way I figured it was, mind you, it should be pretty easy to find an alibi for a sheriff because they're pretty needed in the duties.
You said duties.
Anyway, they're a public figure. So I assumed that when he was listed as a suspect, maybe he had somebody put a hit on her kind of scenario rather than they don't think he shot him, so or shot her. But
I gotcha.
Anyway, he'll pass away still not knowing who murdered his wife because, spoiler, he did not do it.
Poor guy. Did they have kids, do you know? Because that would make it even worse. I realized their kids would most likely be older.
They'd be grown and out of the house.
It's still sad.
I don't know. I didn't delve into everybody's family tree. I would assume because they'd been married a while.
Yeah. It's really sad.
But not even a year after Sheriff Dunning passes away, less than a mile away in November 2013, Ron Kirby, who's 69, would be found dead in the the entryway of his home by his son. Now, mind you, his adult son. Not that it makes it better to find a dead parent, whether you're an adult or not.
I can say that's true.
But anyhow, Ron was shot twice in the chest and once in the hip with a .22 caliber gun. A total of 5 bullets would be recovered either from Ron or the crime scene.
And it's been, 12 years since his wife was killed?
10.
That's interesting.
Crazy.
Somebody was dormant for 10 years and then decides to go kill somebody else in a doorway again? That's interesting.
Then, on February 6th, 2014, again within 1 mile radius of the first two, Ruth Ann Lodato would open her front door that morning and be met with a gun-wielding man who would immediately start shooting. Ruth Ann would be shot, as would be Dorcas Franco, who was a home caretaker for Ruth Ann's elderly mother. Now, she got shot, but I feel like the gunman was surprised at another person being at the door, and the caretaker was not mortally wounded.
Ooh, we got a witness.
Yeah. But I think that's why he got off another shot, but then went running because, he wasn't expecting another person. Now, unfortunately, Ruth Ann would pass away in the ER. Dorcas was the first eyewitness.
It's a terrible name. Are you sure that's right? Because that's what I used to call our brother when he was being annoying.
Dorcas.
Well, I used to call our brother a Dorcas, so...
what other way is there to pronounce that?
I don't know.
Anyway, she would be the first eyewitness with only being struck in the arm. Now, she would give police a description of the man to a sketch artist who would describe the man as a white man with a wild, unkept hair and beard. Now, that picture would be blasted all over the news as someone who was a potential suspect or person of interest that they wanted to do the talking to.
If I was a man, I would totally grow a beard and have long hair if I wanted to go do the murder.
And then shave that shit right off.
Yeah. And if you keep a low profile, it's not like anybody's gonna be like, oh, this person I know all of a sudden shaved all of their facial hair, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that homeless man is cleanly shaven.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Anyway, continue.
Now, also, unlike the other murders, a neighbor had a security camera that would capture a 99 red Ford Escort leaving the driveway.
Gotta love the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Big brother.
And the neighbor.
You're an idiot. Now, naturally, there's a huge manhunt for this feller. Officers are on the ground. Helicopters are also flying overhead, coordinating a hunt for this wild-haired, bearded man in a 99 red Ford Escort. And I'm certain at this point you're going to start to wonder, or if you haven't yet, I was, how exactly they link cases that, especially one being 10 years apart, to the same person they're looking for now. And I'll tell you, it's because all three were shot by the same caliber gun, but each one of the rounds they recovered from the victims are these low velocity rounds that are not typically found at crime scenes. Like, it's just, these are the odd ones out. It's a special kind of bullet, is my point, is why. And when you factor in all of them were seemingly taken by surprise, they weren't robbed, ransacked. It was clearly a knock on the door, people are shot to death.
Don't answer your doors.
Well, so that's why they link them. It's just, there's a pattern there.
That's crazy, though.
Now, the odder thing of this is the ballistics would come back that the bullets were not fired from the same gun. Now, they were fired from a similar gun because, I don't know, I don't want to confuse you with this one, but each type of gun will do different. As it fires a bullet, it'll have different marks left on the bullet. Now, those are unique to each gun, you know that. However, a revolver and the different types of handguns will also leave different marks, which is why they could say whether it came from a revolver or a handgun, an automatic, any of those things.
So I realize I've already made it abundantly clear that I know nothing about guns.
With your rugger?
I'm not anti-gun. I just know nothing about guns, okay? But couldn't you just stuff like a wire brush down the barrel and change the way the markings are? Because then wouldn't that throw a monkey wrench in their whole bullet?
Yes and no. I've actually read cases before where people have done even changed out the barrel. However, there's also, if they recover shells, like that would be the bullet that comes out of the gun, right? They would leave the striations on the side of that bullet. That's usually pulled from a wall or a person of some sort. There's also the casing that bullet comes out of that will discharge. And if you remember, we had to clean those up after we shot in the yard. Mm-hmm. We weren't murdering anyone. We were just target practicing.
I was shooting leaves up in the trees.
Those ones, you were. I'm not looking to you to protect the family. But anyway.
Maybe from the birds. Oh.
Anyway, so the firing pin will also leave a mark on that casing. So if there are casings found at the crime scene, they can also match those because those are also unique to the indentations it'll put on there.
Is there such thing as like a casing catcher?
Yes, it's like a little bag thing. We have one for one of the rifles.
Why the hell didn't we use that?
Because for a handgun, that's not a thing, but like for a rifle or whatever, it has it so you can catch it, and sometimes they still fly out of there.
Well,
it would be stupid to have it on a handgun.
Not if you don't want those casings to be found.
Well, I'm just saying. But yes, that could be a thing, but that wasn't the case with this one because it seemed like, again, similar guns, but not the same gun that fired them.
Okay.
Well, eventually a tip would be sent to the police department. Hey, that feller you're sending all over the news that you're wanting to talk to, he looks a mighty like this feller Charles Severance.
Did he get severance pay?
I'm just going to tell you, I've seen the picture and the sketch, and it does look as close as you can get to if he stood side by side and they sketched a picture of him.
Huh.
You want to open our email, you can take a peek at that there picture.
Hey, funny. It's got you flagged on the email. It says this message seems dangerous.
All right.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's even got his lumpy bridge of the nose. Like, it's lumpy but flattened.
Yeah.
And his, like, eyes are really close together. They were very generous with his hairline, though. He's got a majorly receding hairline in real life, but in the photo, he has almost like some short, stumpy bangs.
But you got to figure that lady was shot and then the feller ran off. So it's amazing they got that much of a likeness for this feller.
Yeah, even the shape of his beard going up into his cheek, that in that shape. Yeah, that's pretty good. Beady little eyes.
Now, a little bit about Charles. Charles was a local eccentric of Alexandria area in the late 1990s, early 2000s, living just half a mile from Ruth Ann. Now, he was born September 25th, 1960, and grew up in Fairfax County. Now, he was considered a normal kid with a normal family who would go on to college and get his degree in engineering, even have several different jobs of being an engineer. He would also briefly dabble in being part of a cult in his 20s, but I guess that wasn't for him. His parents would say that he developed this weird, like, he would give all of his money to the church. Like, even if he didn't have a whole lot and it meant that he was going without something, he would just give it away.
Is that because he had a guilty conscience?
Maybe.
He thought that was his way of earning his way back into heaven?
Well, this is before the murder ends.
Oh. Maybe he knew what he was going to do. He had bad thoughts.
Now, he would eventually take up residency in Alexandria, where he purchased his townhouse. And like I said, that's where he would be half a mile from where Ruth Ann is, and within that 1 mile radius of all 3 murders. Now, in 1996, he would run for mayor of Alexandria and also for a position in Congress in 96. Surprise!
All right.
He doesn't win. And if you're curious, yes, he's a Democrat, which I find ironic since he's a gun wielder.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe that's why he didn't win. He had conflicting views.
Now, sure. So if you're curious, his campaign, it wasn't even close, not even a chance. Now, when he campaigned, he would dress almost entirely in black. He would don a cloak and sunglasses.
Did he think he's a vampire?
I guess. Now, his campaigns focused on juvenile mental health and psychotropic medications, so much so that no matter what question was asked of him, he would find a way to segue into those topics without answering the question. And I don't feel like that's a surprise because politicians do that all the time of, that wasn't the question, and you just went on a little bit of a tirade of something else.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they do, so.
But he also believed that there was, quote, a plague of child and adolescent psychiatry that threatens to overwhelm the city of Alexandria. Terrorism, child exploitation, and adolescent abuse by children and adolescent psychiatrists who peddle dope for profit under the guise of academia and clinical practice must be eradicated.
So, while I realize he's a bit of a nut job, he's not wrong.
You agree with him? Okay, well, you would have voted for him.
But seriously, now look at how much the school system pushes
pills,
like the ADHD pills. And then, as people know, I have 6 children. My oldest 2 boys, I fell into that trap of being told that they needed ADHD medications. Well, my oldest had side effects to that medication. Rather than change the medication, his pediatrician gave him another medication to help with the symptoms of the first medication. And then when he had trouble sleeping, they wanted to put him on a blood pressure medication to drop his blood pressure to help make him drowsy. And that's when I changed his pediatrician and we took him off all of that. And then he ended up with like stunted growth and yada, yada, yada. So the guy, while he's a Fruit Loop, he's not wrong.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. When I read it, I was like, yeah, his delivery might have been off. However, we are going a weird way of over-medicating.
We are.
Not to get too sidetracked, but he would also include in one of his platforms as wanting to introduce country dancing to schools, which I laughed at because he makes a solid point and then goes, and then we'll have dancing. And I feel like at that point, people were like, what? Which then I also did a whole, well, maybe in elementary schools, it wouldn't be a bad idea to like get up and get the wiggles out.
Yeah, it'd be cute.
Yeah. So I was like, no, I hate to sound like I would have voted for this feller, but I was like, he doesn't sound completely like he's lost his shit yet.
No, he's just a little bit, he's an extremist. And he just
Yeah.
doesn't know yet which side he's on. He's a little bit of both.
Also, at one of his campaign events, he would pick up an American flag, point it at Representative Jim Moran before running from the building. And again, I feel like it's like all right.
He thought they were playing Capture the Flag.
When I was reading it, I was really hoping he was going to like run at him like he's jousting, but he didn't.
Well, I thought that's where you were going to go with it.
I was real disappointed.
You've really gotten me several times on your case so far, by the way, because with the first one, with the knock on the door, I thought you were going to start your case with a woman being notified that someone in her family had died, but not met with the barrel of a gun. So, and now you got me again, because I thought for sure he was going to be running at him with the flag, not trying to play keep away.
Yeah. Well, after that loss for mayor, he would go squire dancing in the summer of 1998 and meet a lady. He's now 38. Now, she would move in with him. They would have a son together who was born in April 99. Now, unfortunately, she would have a first eye account of his erratic behavior and emotional abuse that he was capable of. And at one point, he would tell her, again, quote, "I am the lion in this home. You must submit."
When was he born? Tell me he's a Leo.
1960.
No.
September 25th.
Damn. He's a Libra. Like our Paul.
I laughed at that one because that's one way to end an argument, but I'm not sure what exactly you say back to that. And I feel like she just did some blinking and then like turned and started packing some things. So it shouldn't be a surprise that she skedaddled on out of there, and that began a lengthy custody battle. So what would a man do in the throes of a legal battle? Run for mayor again, of course. Now, mind you, his previous campaign was a bit crazy, but he was completely unhinged for his second run in 2000. So much so, he would actually punch one of the organizers.
Oh.
And just also, he did not win in 2000.
I don't think you can punch your way to a winning vote.
I think he ran for mayor in some convoluted idea that he had to, if he won the
mayor, he'd win his kid.
Yeah, that he would be in a position of power and could then get his son.
He just wants to wield his power.
Now, because he's a little bit crazy, and you know how custody battles turn into who's the better parent, it's not real hard for her to find people who are like, the feller's a little bit out there. He should not be with a small child. He can't care for him. He's a loony.
It would have been funny if she just played some of his campaign videos.
Yeah. Now, eventually, the mother is giving sole custody in March 2001 based on it being what is in the best interest of the child, since there were concerns over Charles' mental state. There was also a protective order granted, forbidding Charles from coming into contact with his son or his ex-girlfriend. He was allowed to say goodbye to his son in the courtroom. He was not allowed to hold him or to touch him, and it had to be in the presence of the sheriff deputies.
How old was the son?
He's a baby.
That's sad.
Now, Charles would never be allowed to see his child again. Naturally, Charles would be livid, and if it even captivates how hostile he was about the decision, I mean, I don't feel like it does because I haven't been there, but I understand from the court side of it. You've got somebody who's a loose cannon, and I'm sure if they would have handed him the kid, I don't know that he would necessarily have either handed him back or it posed a risk to the son because the dad was so out there, which I think is sad because it's also not right for him. He can't see his son, touch him, do anything, and he gets to say goodbye as like, what, a wave? That's his firstborn son.
It's really sad.
Yeah, that's why I said I kind of felt sad.
I'm surprised they couldn't have put like some sort of supervised visitation, or he needed to seek some mental evaluation type situation in order to give him some sort of visitation, but to completely remove him from his child, it seems wrong, especially because it's not like he exhibited any sort of violence towards the kid.
So my guess would be because like even during his campaigns and when he punched the organizer, he's not cooperative. He doesn't comply with what's asked of him. And I'm absolutely sure he was probably somebody who wouldn't shut up in court. So if the judge was talking, I imagine he was told he needed to quiet down, or that's enough out of you, or, just all the things, because he can't control himself.
It's really sad.
Charles would go on tirades from here on to basically anybody who would listen about how the city kidnapped his child. Now, he would get into such outbursts that it was frightening to anybody who was in the vicinity, and I feel like they would just be darty-eyed of, you can't exactly walk out. And it kind of reminded me of our Paul when our parents got divorced, and he would go on tirades because he was so mad at mom.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking about.
But it reminds me of those because it was just oh, this is awkward because, one, I've heard it before, but you had to kind of let it run its course because he just needed to get it out.
When you were saying that he wouldn't shut up in court, I thought of our Pa, because Dad got what? $25,000 fine that he had to pay to Mom because he wouldn't shut up in court.
Right.
Granted, his lawyer was terrible,
but Dad wouldn't say.
He didn't know when to stop. Yeah.
Now, that leads to the beginning of 2 years of Charles letting his hatred for all the courts and the elites, is what he would refer to them as, and pretty much anybody who could have control over him.
It's because they wouldn't let him share in the power. Now he's become a hater.
So it's 2 years of that hate bubbling before he would take the life of Nancy Dunning in 2003.
Was she one of the people?
So she was the sheriff's wife. So there's speculation with this one that he was so mad because he figures all the sheriff's deputies that are surrounding him, and the sheriff controls his minions. So I think he saw it as they took his son, he's taken his wife.
It's really sad. This is a sad case. Because he doesn't sound like he was a broken man up until his son.
But they really kicked him off a cliff.
Yeah. I feel like that, not to justify his actions in any way, but it sounds like losing his child broke him.
Yeah. Now, 8 months before the murder of Nancy, Charles would purchase a .22 caliber 5-shot revolver. So Charles is 43. This is after Nancy has been murdered. Just over 2 months after she's murdered. He gets stopped on a traffic stop. It's now 2004. Now, he would be found to have an unlicensed firearm in his possession. And in case you weren't sure, that's a felony. So he would pick up a felony charge for that, and the gun would be seized and destroyed. Now, that's sad on that account because they don't realize at that point that firearm...
That was the murder weapon.
Most likely, you can't say it was because it wasn't tested.
Yeah.
Now, after he shoots Nancy and then after he gets his whole felony charge, he would decide to go traveling the country in his Ford Escort. Quote, tomahawking a homestead in the backwoods of America is what he would jot down in a postcard to his parents.
What?
What
does that even mean?
I have no idea.
He's chopping down wood to build himself a cabin, probably on somebody else's property because he doesn't own it.
But he would spend 10 years writing his thoughts down and doing whatever he was doing in the woods. He would send postcards home often and just do his little scribblings before he eventually would make his way back to Virginia.
I'm impressed that he was able to stay alive.
He was probably eating a lot of squirrels.
I'm still impressed because I don't see how you go from being a city feller to going into the wilderness. And you're a little bit unhinged.
You start with having your kid taken from you, shoot the sheriff's wife, and then go on the run. I think he went on the run because he didn't want to be around for when they were looking for somebody.
Well, I think that and the near miss of them taking his gun and destroying it, that probably made him sweat a little. So
now, bear in mind, since when that was taken from him, he can't purchase a firearm himself anymore because he's a felon. But he makes his way back to Virginia, finds himself a girlfriend, they move in together, and then in May 2012, he would convince her to get him a replacement .22 that he lost of that 5-shot revolver, since it was taken and destroyed
by them police.
He liked it so much, he would convince her to buy him a second one in August 2012.
What?
That way he could have dual revolvers, Western style.
He really liked his country line dancing. He wanted it to be the Wild Wild West.
So you can see where this is starting to fall into place. If you have 3 victims, 3 similar guns, same ammunition, like all the things are starting to line up. Now, mind you, that was just your little snippet into what Charles was doing when, just like you had noticed, that the fuck was that man doing in between shooting the first person to the second one? So now we're going to go back to, now that they know they want to talk to Charles, they're going to go over to his girlfriend's house since they live together and nobody's home, so they drop, one of those cards that, hey, just want to chit chat with you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry we missed you.
Yeah. And then go on. Now, what those officers don't know is where was Charles. Oh, you know what he would do. What does anybody do when they think their picture's being blasted on the news? Why, you'd put on a tricorn hat and a poncho and head to the Russian embassy.
All right.
Follow me on this one. So since Edward Snowden was granted asylum from prosecution, Charles naturally thinks if he makes it to the embassy, he can claim diplomatic refuge. And he makes it to the Russian embassy and tries to sneak his way in as someone else was going, but a guard would stop him. I imagine he looked like a weirdo.
I picture him, by the way, in overalls with no shirt on underneath, and then a poncho with like the
Wild Wild West ponchos.
Yeah, and then just, with the smell.
Hey, you know what I mean when I say a tricorn hat, right?
Yeah.
For everybody else, it's one of those like Patriot 3-cornered smushed triangle hats.
Like it belongs back in the 1600s.
Yes, like he found it in his old-timey Alexandria townhouse. Anyway, so he doesn't get the ability to sneak into the embassy. He's stopped by a security guard who calls Secret Service to come question this weirdo before they escort him to his vehicle. Now, when they get out there, they're like, do we have permission to search your vehicle? And Charles would say, no, before jumping in his car and driving off because he's real disappointed he wasn't granted asylum.
He needs to be put in one.
Yeah, I feel like they looked at him as he sped off, just like, and now mind you, there are probably evidence in there because when Charles is gone, so were those 22s. However, I think when he drove off, they were probably like, we dodged that one because this weirdo, what the hell was he doing here? He didn't really want to do some chit-chatting, so he skedaddles. And
not to knock Americans, but we're kind of Fruit Loopy. We got quite a few of the Unhinged.
It's all the sugar! But anyway, so on March 13th, 2014, Charles would be arrested for being in possession of a gun in West Virginia during a traffic stop. And I can just say, the amount of times this man is stopped, he needs to be a better driver.
Yeah, I was just about to say, why is he getting stopped all the time? Is he just like...
I think he drives like a lunatic.
That's just driving like a man.
He's probably one of those fellers who he got past, so naturally it's a personal attack, and it becomes like some swervy, weird, cutting people off, changing lanes drastically, running red lights, speeding.
Sound like you're speaking from experience.
No, but... So he would be arrested for possession of a firearm, and he would be sent back to Virginia for the murders of Ruth Ann, Ron, and Nancy, because at this point, they feel like they've got their feller. Now, Charles would be charged with all 3 murders. With Ruth Ann, they had an eyewitness, as well as the security footage that placed Charles there, since he was getting into his Ford Escort, and he was literally the last person there before Ruth Ann was shot, and, again, an eyewitness. Then, again, like I told you before, they link those other 2 murders because they happened in a similar way within 1 mile of each other. And on top of that, Charles's townhouse was half a mile from Nancy Dunning when he had lived in that townhouse. Now, I'm sad to tell you, they opt not to seek the death penalty because it's undisputed that Charles is mentally not wrapped tight, and it wouldn't be right to kill a nut job, but he should still be held accountable to some degree.
Yeah, we gotta keep the nut jobs alive.
I don't know why we don't just do, like,
a kindness?
Yeah, like a compassion killing of, boy, your life has been a real struggle because you're a Looney Tune. Here, we're just going to give you this sleepy time shot and it'll be all over. But his trial would begin in 2016. Now, his girlfriend that purchased the revolvers for Charles would testify that she had also bought him ammo, and he was adamant that it had to be low-velocity rounds. She would also recall that when Charles finds out the police wanted to talk to him, when they got that tip, that it looked an awful lot like him, and then the card in the door. Well, Charles would disappear from his girlfriend's house, like I told you, with those 2 .22 revolvers. Never to be seen again, by the way.
Oh.
Now, a search warrant would be done on his girlfriend's house, again to find the guns. they would not find the guns, but they would find 2 cartridges of 22 caliber gun, or like the shells.
Ammo. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the girlfriend would state that she purchased those guns for him, but they were never fired. Or she never fired them. A search warrant was executed on Charles's parents' home, where a box of ammunition would be found. Low velocity, 22 rounds with 10 bullets missing from the back, or from the pack of 50. Now his parents would be like, that is not ours. They would even drag the pond at their house and still not find the guns. Even now, they still have not found those 22s. I mean, they found guns, but not the guns they're looking for. There would also be entered into evidence. Like I told you, Charles spent 10 years writing down all his thoughts, which were a great many. So those are also going to be entered into evidence. There's thousands of pages of his thoughts that pretty much had a theme of being hateful, violent, incoherent slurs against Jews, gays, women in general, and sprinkled with references of sadism.
His girlfriend was just lucky, I guess.
Now, one dated a month before Ron's death said, "Received no satisfaction after revenge killing. Murder is good. Court justice is bad. Can you forgive someone for kidnapping your son? Can you murder someone for kidnapping your son?"
Why didn't he try to kill his baby mama?
Probably couldn't find her.
Well, good job on her. What it is she probably married somebody else in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, I've got a few of his little... I tried scrolling through and picking some so it wasn't like it just read you a shit ton of his little things. But these next ones are just random thoughts, so don't think it's an entire memoir. But they made me laugh. So in another, thou shat not kill
Shat?
is a lie. Which I laughed because he wrote out shat. I'm pretty sure it's thou shall or shalt. Shan't?
Thou shalt.
Fuck it. I know it's not shat.
Thou shalt not. Shall.
Whatever. Thou shat not kill is a lie. No self-respecting, God-fearing patriarch would not kill men and women who delight in terrorizing his family. It is not who dies with the most toys wins or lives the longer. He who denies the most years of life to his adversaries wins.
I feel like I'm in a southern church.
I kind of, when I was reading it,
I feel like I should be closing my eyes and putting my hands up in the air.
You do you. But I laughed because I was like, at first when I was reading, he who dies with the most toys, it's not he who dies with the most toys wins. I was like, he's not wrong there. That's not.
He's not.
But then I was like, you had me. And then we took a immediate back. The last scream of a victim echoes to eternity.
I could see that. But I could see that.
It was nothing to do with business and everything is personal. And I believe that was his motto.
But I believe that too, because there's a lot of issues that people have with separating business from personal. So, okay.
They kidnap and they die.
Well, what did the other people have to do with kidnapping his kid?
It was a group effort, the whole government. It was a conspiracy.
Yeah, but the other people he shot.
Oh, so we're getting there. All children of the legitimate enforcement class must be murdered.
What?
Let all members of the enforcement class scream.
Okay, so he's officially off his rocker.
I'm telling you, thousands of pages of this gold. Great patriarchs teach their children how to murder thy neighbor and be the happy, good mother of his child submits.
What?
I don't know.
So you know how you and I vent to each other about just anything and everything, jokes, laughing, sadness, just all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can use each other as like that mental therapy, the backboard. He's writing to paper for 10 years, including his psychotic rants build.
I think he ran out of paper, and that's when he came back to Virginia and started doing the killings.
That's what he's doing with his
ream of paper.
No, what did you say he was doing in the woods? Not mohawking.
Tomahawking.
Tomahawking.
His way.
He's trying to make some paper. Turns out it's not so easy to write on the wood.
So the prosecutor actually read through every one of his writings, found at his home, in his car, all of it. And I can understand why he didn't feel comfortable seeking the death penalty, because you can't read through these and go, yeah, he's entirely sane. And I think if they would have chosen to go after him for the death penalty, there would have been a chance he'd be found not guilty because of his mental whatever.
I'm really surprised he didn't try to go after the baby mama.
Yeah, well, she's lucky, I guess.
Because she's the one that initiated the whole kidnapping, and she's the one that won the child. Or bare minimum, kidnap his kid back and run off with it. I'm surprised he didn't. I'm not suggesting it for others.
Now, here's another one.
Oh.
Introduce murder into a safe and secure neighborhood. It shudders with horror. Do it again and again and again. Add violence and increase uncertainty among status quo utopian oppressive elites. Emotionally disturb them with violence. Nightmares and daydreams of terror. Horrible child trolls of the neighborhood. And if all of that hasn't been wildly entertaining, he also wrote some poetry.
I'm scared. I'm going to have nightmares.
This one is entitled Parable of the Knocker. Knock. I'm telling you, Andrea, you can't make this shit up. Knock. Enter. A metaphor. A translation. A mystery. Knock, and the door will be answered. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and the door will open. Ask, and ye shall know. Wisdom. Knock. Talk. Enter. Kill. Exit. Murder. Wisdom. Patience is an excuse for cowardice. Jesus is the Lord. That was his poem.
The whole patience is... is what?
Patience is an excuse for cowardice.
So we shouldn't think things through ever, because that's a sign you're a coward. Mm-hmm. Don't be patient. Just act.
Now, mind you, his writings are entered into evidence, so that jury would find Charles guilty, and he would receive 3 life sentences with an additional 48 years, plus a $400,000 fine. I'm not 100% sure how he's supposed to pay for that. My guess would be if he had any money from the sale of his townhouse, any of that.
Anybody willing to give him money to his jail commissary, it would go towards his debt.
Yeah.
Instead of food in his belly or whatever.
Yep. Now, what was crazy is most of this case was pretty crazy, but so he was doing his writings, but he would write at the top, like, I put it in if you wanted to pull it up, you don't have to, but he wrote, like, so you know how if you read, like, a medical article or anything, they'll put the website of whatever published it, and, like, showing it's an official document of some sort of research. Well, he writes all of his little memoir things he named it 2D6 Chess, aka Tomahawk Right Chess Manual of Instruction by www.mentaldisorder.com/chess.
All right.
And I was like, and then he signs, like, at the end of one of them, he does cheers, and then it's like for a signature block instead of sincerely, it says cheers, and then count therapy at mentaldisorder.com backwoods of America, www.mentaldisorders.com/loser.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know.
He had a good insanity defense, that's for sure.
Well, when I was reading it, I was like, I know I couldn't throw in more, but it's just, he was a weird feller. I feel bad for him in the sense that I think the whole thing went not nice with his son, but...
Do you know if he's ever been diagnosed, like, since he's been in jail?
So, I know his attorney would say he's schizophrenic.
So he sounds like it.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. He sounded like he started off not wrapped too tight.
Well, a lot of mental problems, like, it'll be, like, young adult.
Yeah.
But it develops later.
In the late 20s.
I feel like that's where maybe he just seemed like, because he wasn't stupid. He went to school. He became an engineer. He had successful work history. That it's just, he was able to build a relationship with her. And then I don't know what the tipping point, but you can clearly tell after that whole custody thing, he spiraled.
Yeah.
Not that it means anybody should have died, but I just feel like, and I'm not trying to blame the lady who had his baby, but I feel like he needed to be helped mentally, like maybe committed for a short bit.
But if they weren't married, she's not capable of doing that.
No, but where the fuck are his parents?
They're hiding.
He was over there enough to leave ammunition and some of his shit over there, so why weren't they just like, yeah, so we're gonna take you to this place here where you can get a good nap in and tell these people about how the city of Alexandria is kidnapping your boy. Mm-hmm. They'll help you.
They should have done that before his boy was kidnapped, because if he had gotten whatever medical help he needed,
yeah,
it could have all been avoided, starting with what seems to be the trigger that made his brain snap of his son being taken. I figured it out. I figured this feller out.
He didn't get enough sleep.
I know why he ran away to the woods for 10 years. He didn't want to pay that there child support.
Well, I do think they wouldn't have let him have joint custody, but I think it would have been at least visitation. But I think he was so violent from being upset at not getting things his way, and maybe he wasn't told no enough as a child. I don't know. But I feel like he needed to get through the anger, manage his episodes, and then at the very least, supervised visitation, prove that you're not a Looney Tune, and get your shit together. But instead, he chose the way wrong direction and never saw his kid again.
It's just sad because, like I said in the beginning, if the judge would have issued some sort of mental evaluation in exchange, and if he didn't cooperate, I don't know. I realize the judge's hands are tied to a certain extent, and he wasn't really.
So it makes me appreciate that your brain went to the same memory of how mad our dad was when our parents were getting divorced, because I feel like judges see so many hostile men or hostile people in general that maybe it's harder for them to recognize somebody who's just like blind with anger versus somebody who's actually needing some medical assistance. If they see people day in and day out, they see people at their worst all the time, and maybe
it's hard to differentiate what is temporary and what is permanent.
Right.
So my whole thing is with the judge, if he was able to differentiate between a normal crazy man and this feller, in my opinion, because he'd removed all contact, which you don't typically lose complete contact with your kid when you get divorced or go through custody. So there's got to be some sort of red flag that was there. It just sucks that nobody could have committed him at that point since his parents weren't doing anything, you know?
Well, my thoughts were it was probably like not indefinite, but he had to meet certain requirements in order for visitation to be a thing. And he saw, again, I don't know this, but that's what I assumed it was, since he seemed to have such an issue with being told what to do, or like,
you ain't the boss of me.
Right. So he's not going to do it. He just sees it as, you took my kid and you don't have a right to do that.
I gotcha.
And then probably went full-fledged Looney Tune in the courtroom and got pissed and did all that.
That makes sense.
But he failed because he's not in his right brain hole, that he couldn't apply the logic of, if I do these steps, I could get to see my son again. He saw it as, they're taking my son, that's it. And he didn't see past that.
I get it. That makes sense.
Because I agree, they don't just take away all the things and don't give you some sort of a route to come back.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like our Paul couldn't keep his mouth shut so much that he got fined $25,000.
So it's funny too, because I feel like...
And he's not crazy.
It's funny because I feel like it took Dad almost 10 years to finally...
to get through it?
Settle his ass down. So it seems to be the 10-year mark of it takes the menfolk a real long time to put down that hostility and actually start enjoying life again.
It's them testosterones.
Ew. I just had the mental flash of us joking around about hiring a prostitute for our Paul.
No, he just needed to let it out.
Ew.
Anyway, so that's my case.
How long did he get?
3 life sentences plus 48 years. Because, so they also charged him with having a firearm in the commission of a crime, which is a felony, being in a possession of a firearm, several counts of those, being a felon because when he previously was charged. So all of those is what added. So my guess would be, like we've done before, in the event they overthrow the life sentence charges, they can't dispute he was in possession of a gun.
Right. That makes sense.
And since it's several times and he was already a felon, he's got that plus 48 years. Well, that's all I got.
I am conflicted with this case.
I
I
know.
really,
It
I
stinks
feel
when
sorry for him.
you can sympathize a bit.
And don't get it twisted. I don't feel sorry for him in the sense that I don't think he should be punished. And what he did to those families is very tragic. It's just
He was done wrong
he
too.
was in desperate need of some mental help. And I don't say that joking around, because the fact that he went AWOL and disappeared from his family and his life, you went from somebody that was active in the community, actively pursuing being a part of the community, to disappearing.
Yeah.
I think that should have been a major red flag, bare minimum, to his parents. So I don't know. That sucks. It's really sad. And
Yeah.
now that he's in prison, he's not going to get whatever help he needs. And realistically, if he does and he's of sound mind, I feel like that's even worse, because now he's stuck with the reality of his life's over. He's never going to see his kid ever. And he murdered people while having his psychotic break.
Well, and I also feel bad for the sheriff because he never saw justice for his wife's murder before he passed. And then he also, I feel like even if they would have caught this feller, well, not necessarily. I was going to say, even if they caught him while he was still alive, he still doesn't have his life back. But he would have sort of, because I think because he knew, and he had to have, because being a police officer, you know the spouse is going to be your number one, especially if it's like there were no other motivation.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he felt that he had to shrink from his whole life, and maybe he would have wanted to do that either way, we'll never know. But everything he had a passion for in his life died with his wife.
His life fell apart.
Which is why I think, yeah, he passed away in his sleep, but I think he had stress for 9 years and he wasn't handling it well.
Poor guy.
So it's just like, really, he's the fourth victim in this.
Not only did his life fall apart after his wife died and they accused him and all that, but could you imagine if the rumors were true and they were having marital issues? If it's the cold shoulder or any hostile words, and then your spouse is killed,
right,
let alone murdered, I couldn't imagine how you come back from that mentally.
Yeah, like leaving on a bad note and then you can't say you're sorry for whatever you said last.
Yeah, that's so heartbreaking for the sheriff. I kind of hope they didn't have kids. This is a really sad case all the way around.
Yeah. We don't really do a lot of happy ones.
I don't know. I kind of enjoy the ones where we make fun of the fellers that are the bad guys. But while I can laugh about his rants, it's
sad because that's his mental health deteriorating. And I'm not. So when I first started it, and they were talking about how he was eccentric and crazy and all that, and I was reading, and then his platform of like, yeah, again, his delivery was off, but he's not wrong. And it wasn't until I got to like reading the things that were admitted into evidence, and it was like, yeah, he's cracked. But that's all I got again.
Did they ever find his place, his hiding spot in the woods?
No. I feel like it was somewhere in West Virginia, since that's where he got picked up speeding.
So,
but I'd like to know how he gets all these guns. I mean, obviously his girlfriend. Hey, maybe he had his girlfriend in West Virginia.
Maybe it was his sister too.
Ooh.
So I remember watching some sort of special, not on this guy.
No, I was going to say, damn it,
Andrea. No. But I remember some guy who had like a mental breakdown, and he went and lived in like a cave. And then on the outskirts of like on the front of the cave, he had built what looked like a log cabin. I remember seeing something about how the FBI had gone out there and they had to get him out because he was in there. And I think he had a hostage.
Are you sure you're not remembering the movie where Robert Downey Jr. was living in the woods?
I ain't seen that movie.
I think you have, and that's what you're remembering.
Hang on.
It was an old movie, but he had to cross a bridge, or like a little makeshift bridge, to get into the house, and then it turned into like this weird, intricate thing.
No, hang on. This might be it. I'd have to like do more research on it, but it was in Midland City, Alabama. Jimmy Lee Dykes. He was 65 years old, taking a 5-year-old boy hostage, and I remember the law enforcement agents had to get into his bunker where he had the little boy kidnapped. But I might do this case. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.